G'day and welcome. I'm Peter Bender from Bundaberg Commercial and you're on my YouTube channel, so welcome. I appreciate you watching. In preparation for this week's topic, I was thinking, how would the Roman Empire look at property investment, commercial property investment? Would it be slash and burn, gladiatorial games, lots of violence in the Colosseum? Or would they just take over, different businesses and properties? But if you actually think about it and look at it a little bit seriously, not too seriously with life, but a little bit seriously, there's a lot we can learn about how the Romans handled geography. And geography and commercial property is the topic for this week's episode. There's a saying that goes along the lines of, you need to be strong in Rome before you can take over the empire. And what that saying permeates from is the Roman Empire realised it needed to have a very strong home base before it expanded. For those who may have done a little bit of history, Rome is actually surrounded by 7 hills, 7 cities, and those were the first part of the Roman Empire. And then they expanded to take over cities like Sparta, Sicily, the rest of the country of Italy, and then they expanded from there to go out to places like Greece and North Africa, England, and most of the known Western world at that particular point in time. So that's what I want to have a talk about today. How do you factor in geography into your commercial property investment, be it a business or be it a bricks and mortar type property like a warehouse, shed, that sort of type mentality? So I thought we'd go through probably just looking at the pluses and minuses on each geographical strategy that you have in commercial property. The first most obvious strategy you have is a local strategy. Having a think about what are the benefits of having your first investment locally. Well, a big plus is you have local knowledge. So you're not as likely to be blindsided by things that are obvious to locals that you may not know of. For argument's sake, in my area, I know where the new industrial estates are and where the old industrial estates are. I know the opportunities in both those areas. I know the areas that were affected by floods over 10 years ago. I know areas that will probably never be affected by floods. That sort of local knowledge is definitely a big plus for you. The other big plus for having a local property or a local business is the fact that if anything goes wrong, you can be there really quickly. It's half an hour to drive anywhere in Bundaberg to get to where you need to go. And for a first time investment, for your first property or your first business, that's a nice assurance, because there will be surprises, there will be challenges, there will be events that happen that need your attention. What's the downside of having your first commercial property locally? Well, if you was to look at the whole map of Australia or whatever country you're looking at, if you were looking to invest commercially, would you normally pick your local suburb as the first place to invest in? So if you're in Ballarat in Victoria, would that be where you would invest your first property in? If you were at the Margaret River in Western Australia, is that where you would normally put your first investment property in? Looking at the map, so one of the downsides on it is investing locally is probably not where you would invest in if you had a good big picture of the country that you're looking for. Another area of concern with local is you don't get a lot of choice. There's usually not a lot of options available, particularly if you're in a regional area. It's not so much if you're in the city. You've got plenty of choices to run with from there. If you looked one step up from that, if you looked at regionally, now regionally it has the benefit of giving you a little bit of diversification. For argument's sake, my business runs in Bundaberg and Hervey Bay. There's about 2 hours drive difference between the two, and those two cities are as different as chalk and cheese. One's industrial, one's pretty much hospitality and residential. One's agricultural, one's looking more retail type aspects and shopping centres. So at different times and in different industry sectors, if one sector's down, then the other area may be quite working well. And this is important for things like, as an example, in Bundaberg, I mentioned earlier, in 2013 we had a flood. You would have seen it all through the news, much more dramatised on the TV as it really was, but it was still quite a dramatic impact. When that flood came through Bundaberg, the commercial marketing sector, it was cactus. Nothing was happening for 6, 9, 12 months. No businesses bought or sold. No businesses started up. No property was bought and sold. It was a very lean time. However, Harvey Bay, just a drive down the road, didn't miss a beat. Actually, if anything, it benefited because there's a lot of money that was coming out of Bundaberg to go into Harvey Bay. So that's a good plus on having a regional aspect. You get a little bit more diversification. The downside on having perhaps a regional approach is, particularly in Australia and a lot of other countries, towns tend to be very parochial. If I go down to Harvey Bay and say I'm from Bundaberg Commercial, yeah, we have a good conversation, but in the back of the mind they're always saying, oh, he's not really local. He's sort of like the town next door. It's almost like sporting teams, you know. We don't talk to that team on the other side of the highway, you know, we want to compete on the field. You can overcome that quite quickly. I mean, for argument's sake, look at Bundaberg Rum, world beaters. Look at Bundaberg Brewed Drinks, with the now working with PepsiCo in America, another international company. Look at Bundaberg Sugar. You've got the situation where that's another national exporter. So, hey, Bundaberg Commercial might be in really good company. But the point is, you can overcome the parochialism between towns, but you will always find that, particularly with some of the residents who have been there for a very long time. Then going into state level, I don't think there's a lot of difference for state levels within Australia. There is some different legislation that affects things like property taxes and ownership in regards to structure. So you need to make sure you have a lawyer that's based in the state that you buy the property in. So if you're a Victorian and you buy in New South Wales, you need to make sure you've got a New South Wales lawyer who's across the state legislation, because it is different in different areas. So that's a downside on it. An upside, yeah, it gives you a good, once again, increased market play in regards to options and choices that you have. From state, you go to national. Now, national is starting to look at a different kettle of fish. You're starting to look along the lines of more the big players. National is more an option for people who are going to have multiple properties. The downside on it is it's difficult to get your local knowledge, and it also gets a little bit more expensive because you're not going to be able to get over there in half an hour. So you're probably going to find you need property managers. You're probably going to find you need a group of local tradespeople, those sort of type skill sets. So your expenses are going to be higher than if you were locally, because you could probably do stuff yourself when you know your local tradies and the ones who are going to give you a good price. Quite often, tradespeople will just see you coming, as we say in Australia. If you're an interstate person and you've got a property manager, they're always going to charge you maximum price because their opinion is you're rich, you've got lots of money, you don't care how much it costs, you're just going to take it back on tax. So that the downside on that is the fact that there's a bit more expense. On the upside, you really do have a lot more choice. Once again, if you was to start, probably a better way to explain it, one of the strategies that we have in business to make sure that a business stays vibrant is every now and then, every couple of years, we'll do a strategic management review and we will say, if we started the business from scratch today, what would we do? And that's a good way to look at the geography associated with commercial property and assets. If you were to start your commercial venture again, if you say you've already had properties or you hadn't actually got to that stage of getting them organised, where would you go? That is the mentality you should have when you look at national aspects. You get a lot more choice. Once again, in the capital cities, you can probably get away with not needing to go national if you have the benefit of living in Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, Brisbane, Perth, Darwin, and some of the big original areas maybe, you will probably have a wide range of choice there. However, if you're outside of those areas, like on a fringe area or regional area or a country area, it's a good option to have a national look, because it will give you options to have different choice across industries, different asset classes. So those are types of things to really look forward. The final area that we look at in our geographical journey is international. Now, with international, you're really starting to talk big players. Some of the advantages of having an international commercial property portfolio is you can work with currencies. Now, realize that currencies work both ways. Sometimes if you're using American dollars to Australian dollars, the US dollar goes up, US dollar goes down. If you have the opportunity to work it so that you can time the funds to come back to your country of origin, in our case Australia, then it can be quite an advantage to have currency as part of an international player. The other point that you have is you can buy big assets. Take the likes of Westfield in Australia. They got to the stage they owned all the big shopping centres in Australia. There was nothing more that they could buy, eat and gobble up. So they went overseas, particularly into the United States, and just gone onto steroids and just went massively big over there. For an organisation like that, international makes a lot of sense. Thiess was construction was another organisation that went internationally. On the downside of international, it's very hard to control. You're looking at people working for you overseas, different cultures, different nationalities, whole different agenda. It is very difficult to control your portfolio when you're in that aspect. If you think it's difficult to control a national portfolio, you ain't seen nothing yet in regards to trying to control an international portfolio. That's probably the main parts with the nationals. It's interesting that it's a big challenge to go internationally. Westfield was one that ended up being bought out, changed sides, sold, reconfigured. Thiess and some of the construction companies like Lendlease is another one, AMP is another one. It's a big challenge to go overseas, but it gives you the option to really become a monster in your field. And it's like that saying says, you can be a big fish in a small pond, or you can be a small fish in a big pond. It really depends on which way you want to run your portfolio. So the essence is learn from the Roman Empire. They started locally, and then they went regionally, and then they went nationally, and then they went internationally. And I think that's a good methodology to have a look at when you're building your commercial asset portfolio. That's about all I've got to say this week, so I hope you pick up something out of that. Leave some comments. I mean, what I'm saying is not academic. It's not written in books or anything. It's just my own experience and my own thoughts. So I'm happy to hear what you have. Otherwise, take care, God bless, and catch you next Tuesday.